me romance. Read me romance. Read me romance. Read me romance. You could take a look in a book, that's fine. Or you could sit back, relax, and unwind and read me romance. Read me romance.
Welcome back, lady listeners.
Welcome back, lady listeners. We have a brand new week at Read Me Romance, and we have Katie Rhea.
Yay!
Woohoo! So excited to finally have her on the podcast. We adore this lady. She brought us a book called Falling for Nola, and of course she did, because she's just so freaking
I feel
cute.
like I've been reading her my whole life, even though that's ridiculous.
Right? Right? I know.
Like a little bit maybe older than me.
I wish it would tell me on my Kindle, like, does it tell you, like, when you downloaded something? Because I could literally look back, and it's probably, like, the second or third book I ever downloaded in my Kindle was Katie Rhea.
Well, see, I don't even think I'll know, because she used to have some of her books with Harlequin, right? And then I think she got the rights back, and she re-put them. So I know I have books from back in the Harlequin days.
Oh, man, you got old shit.
I got her old shit. She had a old series. God, what was the name of that series? I wonder if it's still the same. I'd have to go back and look.
Hold on. I've got Red's. The oldest one I have of hers is a Redstone Security series. Do you remember that one?
I mean, it's not new, but it's newer.
Yes. This one's Sinful Seduction. Man, this is old as shit for me. I don't know. Maybe it's not that old. 2014. That's literally 10 years ago. Yeah. God, that's crazy. Oh my gosh. I love her. But yeah, she's so sweet.
Yeah.
Do what?
Like I said, I feel like I've been reading her from like the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. For forever. But it's one of those things too. It's like I could pick up, like, I know listening to this audiobook this week, I'm going to love it. And it's going to be new and fresh and fun. And yet it's still going to be safe and comfortable and just like a big hug. That's what I feel like when I read her books. I love them. And they're suspenseful and fun. And she's got great writing, especially when it comes to like pacing in a book. And I know that's more of like maybe a technical side of things or whatever. And as an author, I can appreciate that. But as a reader, that's how I pinpoint what I like about her books, are the pacing in them and how couples get together and the problems that they have and what makes me want to keep listening, where I can't like get through it fast enough.
Yeah.
Those are her books. I love them. So we'll talk about everything else she has in just a few minutes though. So Katie, if you're listening, sorry. You're going to have to wait a little bit longer. But I wanted to mention that I finished the book. I did mention it last week. The book is called Love and Other Conspiracies by Mallory Marlowe. I downloaded the audio, which is cute as shit. And the narrator's great. The book is so fun. It's so cute. It's about this girl. She works for this online blog called Scroll. And it kind of reminded me a little bit of like, do you remember like Tasty, like all the videos they used to do on Facebook, like the Tasty website where they would make the videos of like cooking food, like quick meals.
I forgot about those.
It was like, okay, and like there was the people that were the bloggers, and it kind of turned into BuzzFeed and stuff. Like it's kind of like it morphed into something else. So it's a little bit like that, like BuzzFeed. So she works for this thing, and they're like, she's in charge of like getting a new show. They're like, okay, so you're going to be the producer or whoever for this new show, but we need you to come up with the idea, the concept, create the show, everything. And then at the end of the year, whichever ones like score the best will renew for another season. Or however it broke down. It doesn't matter. But that's kind of how the setup is. So she takes an edible one night with her best friend, and they're up really late talking about show ideas. And she sees this like late night kind of infomercial style thing about a podcast that's like this guy he believes in like all these like Yetis and like Bigfoot and extraterrestrials and stuff. And he's really into them. And she's like, he's just so captivating. And she's like, I can't help but like, want to know more about him. So she ends up convincing him to do a show. And so she produces it, but she's such a skeptic, and they're so cute. Their banter is so cute that one of the other producers is like, yeah, you need to be on the show with him and like kind of like refute them. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're like the sensible, normal person who doesn't believe, and he's the believer, and he's trying to convince you.
X-Files.
Exactly, and they reference that a lot too. So, but the tag on the book says they want to believe, which is like the X-Files. So instead of I want to believe, they want to believe. So, so it is just so cute. The adventures they go on, like ghost hunting and looking up, for Bigfoot, and talking about UFOs, going to haunted houses and different haunted places, and it is such a neat book. The concept is really cute and nerdy and sweet, and they go to like a Comic-Con and this whole thing. It's just so adorable. And the thing I really like the most about it is, so the heroine in the book used to date another guy she worked with, and he like completely dicked her over, was really emotionally abusive to her and beat her down. And it was her first relationship, and it was somebody she worked with, and he was a little bit older and kind of had like seniority over her and just made her feel like a piece of crap. And so the book really is like her finding, she has that confidence, but she's still afraid when she's around him and stuff because of the way he belittled her. And then she starts to second guess herself. So I just thought it was such a great way for this guy to come in who believes in little green aliens and stuff, to come in and be like, I don't give a shit what people think about me. I know people think I'm probably an idiot, or whatever, but he said, I'm living my best life. And he is just all in from day one, all fucking in. And he's so smitten with her and is just head over heels. And he's like a big golden retriever and just the sweetest guy. And so, to see him sort of like give her confidence, back her up, step in when he needs to and protect her. It is just so freaking sweet. And like to see her come into her own and become this really strong woman. It was great. It was such a great book. I really, really enjoyed it. So can't recommend it enough. Love and Other Conspiracies by Mallory Marlowe. It was so cute. So, and it was a different concept, and the audio was great too. So
yeah,
loved that. And then, have you read anything lately? Or are we going to go straight into what we're caught up in? Our conspiracy.
I forgot when you asked. I was like, I didn't read anything. I was like, yeah, I did. I literally just told you I emailed an author to bug her about where's the next book in the series.
That's right, you did. You literally did.
And I was like, I didn't read anything.
Nope, you actually did. You even emailed an author to harass them.
I did.
Mm-hmm. How could you?
I read, of course, it's Braylon Paul. I was on her again because she has a little series. I don't know.
Oh, wait, this is Bryn Palin.
Palin. I always say her name wrong. Her last name. She has a series that's been out for a little bit. I always scroll her stuff because it's just such a safe place to be.
Yeah.
It's just a safe place to be.
I get it.
So I went through there and I seen that she had their vampires one. I was like, oh, I'm going to do that. And
nice.
Yeah, so she's got like 3 of them out, and I actually think they get better.
Yeah.
Usually the first one's the best. Good. I actually think the series is getting better. That's why I was like, okay, I want this 4th couple. Come on now. So, I bet it's the Bite Me. I think the first one is like Bite Me and Wife Bait or something like that. It's cute. It's
quick. Thinking about that, like with like alphas and stuff. I think we were talking about that maybe last time, but how sometimes if the first book is the alpha, you're not necessarily interested in the beta. It's like they kind of, sometimes the series goes down. You really have to start with someone that's younger, and then you're like refer to the older one the whole time, or like the alpha later to keep like that interest going, to keep people going in the series and stuff. Yeah. Sometimes it's like that. It's rare that you can find an author that's great at like just keeping a series going, that it can continue to go and they get better. So that's awesome.
So okay. And then I did, I don't know if anybody else, where did that book go? I don't want to name the wrong. There's a series I've been reading from K.L. Doan.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she's had a series that's been going on, and the newest one came out for Predator. That's what it's called. It's called Predator. Actually, a movie just came out. But the new one came out. It was interesting. I think she's spinning this one into another series. I seen it had like 2 different series titles. You probably in the series, but I read it. It's kind of paranormal.
Okay.
But not like super paranormal. Like she's a what's a person that feels people's shit?
Oh, I
like
know what you
their
mean, like an
emotions. But yeah,
empath?
she can heal too, which she doesn't try to do because it like messes her up. So it's a little paranormal, but it's not thick inside of it of paranormal. Does that make sense? Like
Okay.
they're
Yeah,
still going
yeah.
through their normal like owning the mob city
Mhm.
or whatever crime crap. And that's
I
just
gotcha.
kind of who she is. But I always enjoy her because she does suspense, and I
Mhm.
always feel like I couldn't write it, even though I feel like we write ridiculous. Like I'm like, this is so
Yeah.
ridiculous, but then I'm like, I love every second of it. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, I'm so
yeah.
glad she does it because some people like I'll start to try to write something like, I'm like I can't do that. This doesn't work. But I'll read it. I'm like,
Mhm.
yes,
Yep.
this is the best thing. So I always enjoy that because her men are just instantly over the top. She can still give you like 100 and something pages, and
Mhm.
it just works. But she keeps like so. But to do that, I think that's why she has to have such like big things crazy happen, like fight scenes, and you know what I
Mhm.
mean, to
And
keep you going.
This is K.L. Doan, right?
Yeah.
Like that author? Okay, okay.
Even
Yeah.
like her motorcycle books, or not her motorcycle books. She's got a bunch of series like this, but she
Yeah.
keeps you in, and it's longer. And I think it's I don't know. It's a good formula for her. It works for her. It
Mhm.
works for her.
Well, I made me think as you were talking about this, it made me think of May Adler, and I saw that she had one that was out, I think last week or something, like she had a new release.
Yeah, it's one of her
Yeah.
short, dirty
Yeah.
ones. I want a longer
Mhm.
one. Get on
I know,
it.
right? That's such a nice complaint to have, though, and it is very flattering, I think, to an author when somebody reads your book and you're like, "I wish it was longer." So
Yeah.
we had
But
a
no,
book
she does
out
the dirty ones
recently.
really good, but I just loved her too. The Guardian's Angel, I think it's called. Look, I even still remember it.
Oh, yeah, I know, right? That it
I
must
know.
have been good. You must have read it several times.
But
But,
yeah.
we had that book, The Bad Guy and the Good Girl, and they were about, the first one's about a guy that's locked up in an asylum, like an insane asylum, and he's there because like, his dad put him there, basically. But, the book that we just had come out is called The Good Girl, and it's sort of the same situation where her mom puts her in this asylum to kinda get rid of her,
She did kind of stab
and,
somebody.
I mean, there were
I
things
mean, shit
happened,
happens.
choices were made. But she ends up, like, fucking the doctor in it. So there's a lot of ethical issues. All right, you know what? Sue us, okay? But listen, so but everybody that has messaged about those books were like, "Oh my god, please write more of these. These were so,
Really?
like, out of pocket." Yes, they love them. I think because it was such a wild formula, like or a wild scenario. The fact that we wrote about these two people inside an insane asylum. And I don't know really what made us do it other than we were both watching like true crime stuff at the same time. And we're like, let's write a hero that's really fucked up. And that was kind of like how they came out. So I was surprised how many people messaged and were like, I wish this would have been longer. I want more of these type of books. Like this was so just crazy and out there and like so good. So yeah, I was like,
I mean,
I
it's
guess
an
some.
interesting concept to really write somebody who is
Mhm.
crazy in the end, but
Yeah,
crazy
yeah,
for her,
mhm,
but he's still
yeah,
crazy.
mhm. Yeah, right, mhm. So, yeah, I mean, that it's a nice compliment when someone's like, "Oh, I wish it was longer." But, as an author, you're like, "No, it had to end, I'm sorry." Okay, so and I've been wanting to talk to you about the JLo divorce.
Oh yeah. Well, I
So
know you're more into the couple than I am. I'm really curious about the
yeah.
divorce because I flipped through the divorce papers.
Oh, you did? Tell
Yeah.
me. What's it say?
Well, what's interesting, well, first off, um, she didn't she put an email down, right?
Okay.
So no, okay, let me start there. J-Lo filed her own divorce papers,
Not with a lawyer.
not with a lawyer. Her ass
What the
sat
fuck?
down and filled in divorce papers
Oh,
and
shit.
submitted them. Why? That's what I wanted to
Why?
ask about.
Yeah. Do you
Why?
think her legal team was like, "Shut the fuck up. Don't
No,
do this"? No?
no. But
Well, did they have a prenup?
I don't think so. But it's not.
Okay.
I'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
Her email she put on there was roses are red, and 10472, which is the Bronx zip code. Like,
okay.
what's that? And then she filed on her anniversary, and she filed herself. Maybe I've just been hanging out with Taylor Swift too much. I'm like, what's happening here? This bitch sat down and filled out like 20, 30 pages of divorce papers. Why?
What? I know. Why? And she did it on their anniversary?
On their anniversary. She had to have made that email for them because she knows it's going to be public record. We could see it.
Uh-huh. Damn.
I'm like,
yeah, I don't understand. Why didn't she get her lawyers involved in it? That's interesting.
I don't know. But so, well, you could do it. Like if you wanted to go and do, if it was going to be non-contested, which I think the divorce is going to be non-contested. They both have their own money.
They both have money. Yeah.
But things can still get complicated because let's say they both bought the house, so they could have a bank account together. Let's say they both bought the house, but they bought it from their independent funds before. So that's their before assets going into this. And how much did you put in? But anyway, so when she's filling out the paperwork, she's like, it's uncontested. We're fine with everything. But then she says stuff like the property. She's like, well, we don't know whose is whose. I'm like, then that's not uncontested. That's not how this. Yeah. That's why I'm like, where's the lawyer?
Yeah.
I was just curious. If you knew something, I was like, what is she doing?
No, and here's the thing is like, I'm obsessed with them as a couple based on his obsession with her. Yeah, that's why I like them as a couple. Once they got married, I got out. I was like, okay, they're married now. I don't care anymore. Like that was the end. That was my happily ever after. I'm like, I'm good. I don't need to check in on them. And then I randomly hear like a couple of days ago that they're getting divorced. I was like, wait, what? I didn't know anything about that.
There's always pictures of him looking rough. I will say this.
But it's like he always looks like that though.
Yeah.
Even when he wasn't with her.
I think it would depend. I think it depends on the type of person that J-Lo is, because J-Lo, I don't know her from a hole in the wall, but J-Lo is very, she eats clean, she exercises, she's clearly on a schedule, she's very
regimented. Yes.
Yeah. So I can be that way a lot of times when I'm like in my go, I work out, I eat this way, I do this, I want things done that way and this way and this way. And I think a lot of partners want their other partners to kind of do some of those things with them. And if you're like me, I don't care. If you don't want to work out, you don't want to work out. If you don't want to eat right, that's as long as you're healthy-ish, I don't care if you work out or not. But I don't think a majority of partners have that same kind of mentality.
Yeah, for sure.
So
I can see him
that being a problem for them.
Well, especially with his tendency into gambling and drinking, his addictions, those ghosts like constantly following him. And I think he transfers his obsessions, and it's like either to women or to drinking and gambling or partying or whatever it is. And it's like, he just shifts his focus. And for so long it was on her, and I think it was kind of the same thing. Like maybe after they got married, it was like everybody kind of the attention just sort of died down, and he didn't have to work for this approval or whatever it is. Again, we don't know these people. We're just making assumptions, but it appears that is what kind of his focus has shifted now, because he, got the prize, got the girl, but he can't keep her, But again, looking at her past relationships, this may be the reason she butts up against her partners eventually, because she is so regimented and her lifestyle is so busy or whatnot. And it's like, a certain type of man, it takes them being with her.
I feel like that would make it easier. If I'm regimented, I don't need you all the time. I've got this going on. I'm rolling out of bed.
But for a man with a huge ego, I mean, look at the men she's been with. I mean, Mark Anthony, Derek Jeter, Ben Affleck. These men have huge egos. And if she doesn't need them, what are they going to do with their lives? They want to be needed and have their ego stroked and be, propped up. And I can see her not giving that at a certain point, where it's like, okay, I am tired of giving you attention, or whatever it is. I could see that, if that maybe is the case. And again, who knows? But based on speculation, I could see her getting exhausted trying to keep a man like that happy.
Yeah,
and just being like, I got my own shit to do.
Yeah, I can see that. Like, that's, I could be very, but like I said, I can be, as long as you do your thing and I do my thing, I think I would get worn down. I think I've become so independent in those things. I might, if he was like, oh, I'm going to come to the gym with you, I'm like, why? What's going on?
You're right. What's wrong?
Like, talk to me, right? I'm going to watch a show.
Well, that's the thing. It's like, maybe that's kind of where it went, where she was just like, I cannot give you any more attention than I'm already giving. And it just wasn't enough.
That's true. Maybe it's the opposite of what I'm thinking. She just doesn't have enough time for him.
Yeah. And it could be that he just is like the men that she's dated in the past, where they have these huge egos and want to be worshipped. And she's just not going to do that. Yeah. Maybe she doesn't have time for that shit. And I can't blame her, because she's like fucking 60 years old. Which is crazy to think about, because she looks 25. But, it just sucks too, because I saw like her tour wasn't doing great. And it was like,
I was just about to ask you that, because I got a joke today. It was about her tickets. She's like, I'm not buying it like J-Lo's tickets. And I was like,
no. I know. Well, that was just it. Like, the prices were crazy high.
Well,
and she was like,
I was on Black TikTok, and I was going down because there's like some drama going on. There are girls over there call out people, and it's so good to watch. I'll like go down a rabbit hole sometimes. I'm like, whoa, she just ate her ass.
Yep.
But that was one of her lines she said about somebody. She's like, I ain't buying it. I was like, oh shit. So I didn't know that.
I just saw that like several times. Either canceled shows or not able to sell out in venues and stuff. The ticket sales being super high and people just being like, no, we're not going to pay that to go see her. Which, I mean, I can understand that. I'm sorry, she's not. I just don't think she's gonna garner the same ticket prices as somebody like Taylor Swift or Beyonce would.
Can you name like 7 of her songs?
I mean, I probably could, because I love her music, but I wouldn't pay that much to go see her.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I love her music. I've listened to all of it. I just wouldn't pay over $100 to see her. And I think they were a couple $100. So, I'm sure that this comes at a time when, she's already stressed and worried about that. And then her relationship. Yes, that's right. And then she had a movie that didn't do well. So it was just I think it was just a compilation of a lot of shitty things happening. And now she's getting divorced. And it's just, I hate it, because I feel like, because the woman is going to take the brunt of this situation in any kind of divorce like this, where they're both high profile. I feel like the woman is going to take more of that.
Because all the pictures they show, it shows him like he's looking annoyed. So everybody's like, oh, she's probably such a handful. She's probably
she's probably a bitch, So people are just making assumptions about it. And that's all they're going to take away from this, is that she's difficult. And that pisses me off, because it's like, no, maybe she's just a really like amazing individual that has a lot of demands of her time. Yeah, and he's a big fucking man baby.
Yeah.
What's more likely, that she's a frigid bitch or that he's a giant man baby? What is more likely?
She's a giant man baby, because his kids are still hanging out with her. Even Jennifer Gardner was with her.
Yes, exactly.
So I'm going to guess it's him, not her.
Yeah, it's him being a giant man baby, or her, over her being some huge bitch. I think that's more likely what it is, but it will be spun, because it'll be like she can't keep a man. It'll be like Jennifer Aniston all over again. When it's like,
they can't keep her.
Yeah, right. It was like, or she chooses to be happy instead of putting up with baby bitches.
Yeah, for real.
I'm so sick of men.
I think that's why a lot of women, I think, that have a lot of money, and they're always like, they're getting divorced. Yeah. No, they don't. They don't have to tolerate shit.
Yeah, you don't have to.
I mean, I think you told me that one time. Money doesn't buy you happiness, but it gives you freedom.
Yeah, money gives you freedom. That's right. That's the absolute truth. It gives you freedom, and it's like that's the gift that allows you to do everything else. So it doesn't, it won't buy you happiness, but it will buy you the time to do the things that will make you happy. So, and the
I was
freedom
reading a
to
study. Oh, we're probably
choose.
running late on time already, but I was
It's
reading a
fine.
study. I don't know if I talked about it with you or who I talked about it with, about how they're saying that the weddings are like flipping, that it's more the
No.
men that are starting when they're getting older, looking for, oh, I want to get married, I want to have kids, and women are like, the older, they're like, no, 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 no. And now women are
Yeah.
backing up, and it's like, when you ask a lot of women, what do you want to do when you get older? They're not saying get married and have kids, but the men are. And it's like this, the tide is slowly flipping around.
Well, and I found it really interesting that, I heard someone say one time that it may have been Drew Offwallow. I can't remember if it was in her book or it was she was saying. I feel like she was the one that said it, that men like to threaten that women will be, like, oh, if you don't stop this, you're going to die alone. That's like men like to threaten women with that, when women never die alone.
No.
Because women have relationships. Men are the ones that die alone. Yeah, yeah.
Women
so it's like
thrive. That's what it actually said. It said that suicide rates go way up for men who get divorced. They drop for women, and their mental health becomes better when they get divorced.
They're not putting about the man bitches like Ben Affleck.
And they said that the reason that men oftentimes marry so quickly after their spouse dies is because their only main contact towards the end is just their wife, where the women have lots of friendships. They have lots of bonds. They've created deep bonds with other people where men don't do that later in life, have a deep bond like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
They'll have friends, but it's not like the deep.
And I think about my dad might be the exception because he has a lot of like really good guy friends that he still hangs out with and stuff. But if I look at the older women in my life, it's like by and large, the women have great relationships with either with their kids or their siblings or, other or the relatives, but great friendships, years and years. I mean, I remember my grandmother had 2 friends that she had, almost her entire life. And the 2 friends that she was the closest to, when they lost their husbands, they like had their little group that would get together all the time, and it was like, it was just even through their whole lives, they kept this bond. And I just think that's, I feel like that's, it says more about how amazing women are, that we make these great relationships and we stick with them and we cultivate, the people around us that make us better long term.
Well, maybe society will change too, where men won't be so hands off to building deep relationship with other men.
Yeah. I think that's what it's going to take. It's going to take like it being shook up, to where, the roles reverse and the situation's different.
Me and Isabel were talking about this like 2 days ago. We were talking like, if men would just be open into having sex with each other, they'd probably be so much more happier. They just get blowjobs all the time. They could just like exchange them like favors. And just chill out and stop being so
get over
about it.
Yeah, just be gay for a second.
I'll do you one, you do me one. All right, let's go. And then we go back to Xbox.
If you could just somehow choose your sexuality, like, God, wouldn't that be a gift?
Say choose it. You just want to get off. Why do you have to be so picky about who it is? Your friend's right there.
Yeah, just chill for a second, guys. Katie Reus is just sitting here like, I wish they would shut the fuck up, right? We haven't even played her book. She's just sitting back here like, any minute now, guys, any minute. Okay, Katie Reus is a USA Today best-selling author of the Ancient Rising series and the Redstone Security series. Woo! She fell in love with romance at a young age thanks to books that she pilfered from her mom's stash. Years later, she loves reading romance almost as much as she loves writing it. However, she didn't always know she wanted to be a writer. After changing majors many times, she finally graduated summa cum laude with a degree in psychology. Look at you go! Not long after that, she discovered her new love, writing. She now spends her days writing paranormal romance and romantic suspense. The book you're about to listen to is called Falling for Nola. They started off on the wrong foot. when Nola's firefighter neighbor wakes her up for the third night in a row with his loud motorcycle, she has some choice words for him. Once they clear the air, sparks fly between them. Kayce falls for his neighbor from the first moment she yells at him, and he's not alone in his attraction. But since they're neighbors, she's worried about the fallout if they part ways. Only he wonders why she thinks they'd ever break up. This is gonna be so good.
She writes really good heroes. She writes really good.
Oh my God, she writes.
And then she writes strong but vulnerable women too.
Mm-hmm.
So they can be completely independent. They know their shit, but then they can have those internal moments. It feels really relatable. I mean, obviously, I'm not like
for sure
an artist in her books or whatever, but it feels relatable where you can go out and do your shit, but at the same time still be kind of like vulnerable back at the house.
I love it. This is going to be so great. You guys are going to love it. Falling for Nola is in the same world as her Redemption Harbor Security series, and Kayce has a cameo in Fighting for Adeline. It's not the same series, but it's definitely the same world. And Fighting for Magnolia, book 4 in the Redemption Harbor Security world, just released on August 27th. And it's an emotional second chance romance suspense between two people who never got over each other, even though time and distance separated them for almost 2 decades.
It's really sweet, guys. And it has a great ending. It has a really great ending.
Oh, I love that. She just finished A Very Merry Hitman, which when I read that title, I was like, instant purchase.
Oh, I'm glad you mentioned that. Okay, go ahead.
Yes. She just finished A Very Merry Hitman, and she said, I'm in love with this quirky series of holiday romances that feature hitmen. Look for that one in October. Also, for any of her readers who are thinking about trying something new. Oh, this was like the fun thing I said to, like, you know, I've been asking authors, like, tell me one fun thing about yourself. And she said, for any other readers who are thinking about trying something new, she wants to say that she hopes you go for it. She recently turned 40-something and decided to start working towards getting her private pilot license, and it's been one of the best experiences of her life. She put it off for years because of excuses are easy to come up with, and that's one of her only regrets in life, that she didn't do it sooner. So if you're looking for a sign to do that thing that you've been thinking of, consider this your sign. Get out there and kick some butt. I thought that was really sweet. So she's getting her freaking private pilot license.
I know. I've seen her.
Badass she is.
I've seen her on Facebook put some pictures up.
That's freaking cool.
When you mentioned the Hitman Christmas one, I wanted to mention, because we're hitting the holidays, the O'Connor family series. It's such a sweet little series in a town. It's the whole town is Christmas all the time.
Oh, shut up.
It's so cute. The first book is 99 cents. It's Merry Christmas Baby. And the audio, so the book is 99 cents. And if you buy the book, the audio is $2.99. And all of Katie's audios are really good.
Yeah,
so
they are.
I've got and then it goes into a whole series. They've got audios and everything. And I adore that series. It's so good.
Yeah, she's awesome.
Something to listen to when you're doing your holiday stuff. I would definitely check out that one.
Yeah. She's got you can find her on Instagram. It's Katie Reus, KatieReus. So Katie Reus author. She's on there on TikTok and Facebook too. So she said she usually hangs out on Facebook and Instagram more than anything, but she is on TikTok too. Or you can check out her website, katiereus.com. Sign up for her newsletter so you don't miss out on releases and stuff. So, but I mean, she's amazing. So you cannot go wrong. This is going to be a great way for you to step into her stuff. So
yes,
let's do it.
All right, let's send them in. We'll see you guys on the other side.
Bye.
This is Falling for Nola by Katie Reus. Read for you by Joshua McCrae. Chapter 1. Nola jerked awake to the sound of that stupid motorcycle. The loud, obnoxious engine that had woken her up the last 4 nights. Or mornings, considering it was 3 in the morning. That's it, she growled to her cat, Nebula, who was looking at her with the same amount of disdain she felt. She tossed her robe on as the engine revved again, then stalked to her front door, shoved her feet into her sneakers, and yes, stalked across her damp yard to face her new neighbor, who had decided to make an enemy of her. As she approached, the rider of said motorcycle took off his helmet and blinked at her in surprise. And oh God, the man looked as if he had been carved by a deity and placed on this earth to walk among mere mortals who could only aspire to such sharp cheekbones. He was beautiful. And that just pissed her off even more. Hey, ass face. Okay, maybe she should have been more diplomatic, but it was 3 a.m. He blinked those baby blues at her. Hey. She jerked a thumb over her shoulder. See that house? Yum. I live there, and for the last 4 mornings you've woken me up with this monstrosity, and probably more of your neighbors too, but they're too polite to say anything. So while you're out here getting hard on your stupid motorcycle, or hog, or whatever the hell you call this thing, people are trying to sleep. And, oh God, when had she turned into her dad? She was only 25. But, whatever. There was a reason she had moved away from the quarter. It had been too loud, and apparently she'd been born with an old soul. Or a cranky one. Whatever. The dark-haired god looked as if he was fighting a smile as he swung his leg over the bike, but at least he didn't take a step toward her. Though to her annoyance, she had to look up at him when he stood. Damn it. I apologize, ma'am. I didn't realize how loud it was and honestly didn't think about the time. But that's on me. Sometimes when I get home, I'm still listening to a podcast or book. He pointed to his helmet, which looked fancy. Must be connected to his phone. I'm used to keeping weird hours, but I shouldn't let it affect my neighbors. I promise from now on that I'll turn off my engine and finish listening to my stuff in my house. She blinked, surprised by his easy, apologetic manner. I'm a good 10 years younger than you, so you don't have to ma'am me. But thank you. He cleared his throat, and yep, he was fighting a grin. And that pissed her off too, because apparently she'd turned into a rage monster. What the hell was wrong with her? I promise I'm not trying to piss you off even more, but your top is see-through. And the bastard didn't even look a little sorry about that. She glanced down, saw that her robe was wide open. Yeah, probably because she had forgotten or lost the sash somewhere on her warpath to yell at him. Her white tank top was indeed see-through, and her nipples were hard. Because of the fall weather, thank you very much. You're welcome for the peep show, she snapped, even as she tried to tell herself to calm the heck down. But it was like she had unleashed an angry beast on the sexiest man she had ever seen in real life, and couldn't stop herself. Because my breasts are fantastic. Then she stalked back home, deciding to go out with her head held high. Chapter 2. Kayce Laurent watched as Nola Cartier stepped into the backyard of Mrs. Aguilar, one of his new neighbors. He'd come to the weekend barbecue solely in hopes of seeing Nola. The woman who had called him an ass face a week and 1 day ago was the most adorable, gorgeous woman he had ever met. Though something told him that if he called her adorable, she'd knee him in the balls, or at least think about it. Oh, that's Nola, Mrs. Golda, his neighbor on the other side, told him. You've probably seen her, but she lives on the other side of you. Oh. He nodded along, hoping for more information without seeming obvious, because he definitely wanted to know more about his feisty neighbor. This afternoon, her dark curls were down around her shoulders, and she had on form-fitting jeans, a t-shirt with the Saints logo, and bright green sneakers. Oh yes, and she's absolutely wonderful. An artist, that one. And she's made quite a name for herself for someone so young. She laughed softly. If only my son lived here, I'd introduce them. High praise. He took a sip of his beer as he listened and tried not to stare, to track her movements like a weirdo. Indeed, she works with the owner of one of the galleries on Julia Street. I can't remember which one. I'll introduce you. Nola, she called, smiling at their neighbor as she waved her over. About 20 families had shown up this Saturday afternoon, and he'd already been told that more would filter in and out over the next couple hours. He was just glad that his gorgeous neighbor had shown up. And yes, the chance of getting to talk to her again was the real reason he was here. Her smile tightened ever so slightly as she approached, but she gave Mrs. Aguilar a hug. "It's good to see you. I've already snuck a little of your jambalaya. It's definitely the best in the neighborhood," she whispered conspiratorially. "I know, but thank you for the validation," the woman said on a laugh as she turned back to Kayce. "And this is your new neighbor, Kayce Laurent. Kayce, this is Nola Cartier. She's the sweetheart who looked after my dog when I was on vacation last month." "It's nice to meet you," he murmured, drinking her in, and wondering if the attraction he was feeling was one-sided. She cleared her throat. "Nice to meet you, too." "Oh, I see, Gloria. I'll catch up with you later," Mrs. Aguilar murmured, squeezing Nola's arm before she hurried off. Nola looked around briefly, as if she was contemplating escaping. "Look, I'm sorry about the other night. I want to be a good neighbor, and I'm coming from living between a condo I was barely in, and the fire station downtown. I've never lived in a house, not since I was 18. "And that was, like, 50 years ago?" She grinned mischievously. "Ha ha." But he found himself grinning. He was 35, thank you very much. "I'm joking, obviously, but apology accepted. I want to be a good neighbor too, and I probably shouldn't have yelled at you and called you an ass face." "You don't sound sorry." "I know. I said I probably shouldn't have done that." He barked out a surprised laugh. "What if I take you on a motorcycle ride, as an extra apology?" She narrowed her gaze at him. "Is that like a weird euphemism?" Now he nearly snorted out his drink. No, it's just a peace offering." "I'll take it, if you let me drive." "Maybe once I get to know you." "That's fair. So how does this afternoon sound?" she asked. "Perfect." Hell, better than perfect. He turned slightly, nodded at the rest of the party. "So, is there anything I need to know about our neighbors?" Well, Mrs. Aguilar and Mrs. Johnson have a serious rivalry over who makes the best jambalaya. So you either have to eat both of theirs, or none at all, and you will clearly tell them that you can't decide whose is best." "For real?" "Yes, because they will definitely ask you and they both hold grudges. Or you could fake a shellfish allergy and avoid the whole thing altogether." "Since I don't plan on moving anytime soon, I'll just eat both." She grinned at him. "So, are you from here?" Not originally. I was born in Biloxi, and my family moved here when I was 18, so I decided to attend college here to be close to them. What about you?" "I'm from here, born and raised." "Do you have siblings?" "Oh, yeah, 3 sisters. You?" She laughed lightly. "2 brothers and 1 sister, and I'm the youngest." "I'm the oldest." He took a sip of his drink, looked around casually, mostly so he wouldn't keep staring at her. But it was difficult to look away when he wanted to memorize every gorgeous inch of her. "So, I hear you're an artist." "Yeah, I started painting before I started writing," she said on a laugh. The woman was like walking sunshine. "Mrs. Aguilar said you show your pieces downtown." "Oh, yeah, but not exclusively. I mainly work with a gallery off Julia Street. But I occasionally set up shop at Jackson Square in the spring or fall, usually during peak tourist times or festivals." "But not the summers." "Hell no. I'm not dealing with that heat. And speaking of heat, you're a firefighter. But you're not living at the station anymore." "I'm an inspector now. I recently got promoted." And everything had changed, something he was still adjusting to. "That's really great. I bet you're glad that Halloween is over." He laughed because she was right. Yeah, it's worse than Mardi Gras. But Thanksgiving is coming up soon, and that's even worse. Oh, I know. I've heard the stories about turkeys and fryers. One of my brothers is a firefighter. He's with Engine 9 off Esplanade. Oh, nice. I know some of the crew over there. So, which house were you at? As he answered, he was vaguely aware of Mrs. Aguilar watching them with interest. But he kept his focus on Nola and found himself entranced by just her voice. Later, he realized that was the first sign, and he was absolutely a goner for her. Chapter 3. Nola felt lightheaded as she held on to Kayce's middle as he zoomed down Elysian. They had left the barbecue early, and true to his word, he had taken her for a ride on his bike. She didn't want to love it so much, or like him so much. But the man was funny, kind, and, okay, gorgeous. And now that she knew he wasn't actually a jerk, she did feel bad for the way she had freaked out the other night. To be fair, a sleep-deprived Nola was a monster, and that was her only excuse. He squeezed her knee once, the sign to ask if she was still doing good, and she gave him a thumbs up. Taking an afternoon motorcycle ride through the Garden District, then around the border of New Orleans proper, was a perfect way to wrap up her Saturday. Though she didn't want today to end and was contemplating asking Kayce if he wanted to grab something to eat a little later. Then she second-guessed herself. Because that's what she did. Second-guess everything. Ugh. She had no idea how long they had been riding, but by the time he pulled down their street, she actually felt a twinge in her thigh muscles from squeezing so hard. And at that thought, her mind went to a dirty, fun place. But she locked it down, because she had just met the guy, and this had been his apology bike ride. He steered into his driveway, parking behind a shiny blue sports car. A striking blonde stepped out as Nola took her helmet off, and oh my God, her hair was sweaty and sticking against her head after the long ride. And of course, this woman looked as if she'd stepped off a runway. "Thanks for the ride," she said to Kayce, handing him the helmet even as she pulled out her cell phone. "I've got to take this, but I'll catch up with you later." Sounds good." He looked like he wanted to say more, but she smiled and half-waved at the bombshell as she held up her phone to her ear and pretended to answer a phone call. It was almost 6, and some hot woman was at Kayce's house because it was Saturday night, and of course he had plans. How could he not? He probably had plans most nights of the week, with a different woman. Once inside, she shoved her phone in her back pocket and caught sight of herself as she stalked by the foyer mirror. Yikes. Her curls had definitely not fared well during the ride, and she so wasn't going to dwell on the fact that Kayce was going out with someone tonight. Why shouldn't he? She just, had a teeny tiny crush after today, that was all. But he was a firefighter, or had been. And in her experience, the majority of them were players. So she was going to lock down this crush and be the best neighbor ever. Her phone rang and she nearly jumped, but grinned when she saw her older sister's number. Hey. Hey yourself. Want to come over and watch your precious nieces for a few hours? Why does precious sound like code for monster? Celine cackled. Because it definitely is. My sitter canceled last minute and we've got tickets to the Nutcracker. The girls are bouncing off the walls. It's kind of early for the Nutcracker, she said, even as she grabbed her keys and purse. It's playing all month. And next, the Sanger, and oh my God, that's not the point. Can you watch them? Of course, cranky pants. I'm already on my way. As she pulled out of her driveway, she saw that the sports car was still there, and neither the bombshell nor Kayce was in sight, because they were inside his house, doing who knew what. Ugh, she knew exactly what. Chapter 4. 2 weeks later. Nola wiped sweat from her brow as she reached her driveway, slowed to a walk as her heart rate started slowing. A 4-mile jog was exactly what she had needed this morning. No one in her family ran but her, couldn't understand her love of it, but it centered her, especially when she needed to work on a new project. She had been trying to get back into her current painting, but found herself too distracted. On instinct, she glanced over at Kayce's driveway, knew he was already gone for the day, because she had heard him leave, and only then had she come out for her morning run. She hadn't seen him in the 2 weeks since the day of the neighborhood barbecue and motorcycle ride. She wasn't exactly avoiding him, just trying to keep her distance. Which, okay, maybe she was avoiding him. She was simply annoyed by her attraction to him, that was all. And distance was the best way for her to get over her dumb crush. Sighing as she reached her porch, she frowned when she realized 2 of her steps had been fixed. They were on her long to-do list. Owning a home was a lot different than renting, she had learned. As she walked up the steps, she balanced back and forth to make sure, and yep, everything had been nailed or glued down. Huh. She pulled her cell out of her pocket as she headed inside. Her dad answered on the second ring. "Hey, short stuff." She smiled at her entire family's nickname for her. "Hey, yourself. Did you sneak over here and fix my front steps?" She slid her sneakers off before making a beeline for her kitchen. She knew she should drink water after running, but whatever. It was a coffee kind of morning. "Nope, but I was planning on coming over tomorrow to help with the fruit trees." "Oh, okay, just checking. I'd planned to fix them tomorrow and thought you beat me to it." Maybe one of her brothers had. "I bet it was one of the boys," he said, reading her mind, even though her brothers were both grown men. To their dad, they'd likely always be the boys. "Probably so. So, are we still on for tonight?" "You know it. I already got reservations." She grinned to herself as she started a small pot of coffee. "Pretty sure they hold that table for us." Her and her dad met up at an Italian place once a month, usually on a Saturday, mostly out of habit. During college, they had started the tradition to catch up with each other, and it had stuck. "I like to be prepared anyway." "I know you do." Once they disconnected, she found herself standing at her kitchen window, looking at Kayce's quiet house. Ugh. She needed to get over whatever this nonsense was. She'd never been distracted by a good-looking man before. Not like this. To absolute distraction. And she barely knew him. That was the most maddening thing. There had been a spark a couple weeks ago, that was all. A wild one that she had felt all the way to her core, but it was no big deal. No big deal. Okay, now she was talking to herself. Grabbing a cup of coffee, she headed to her studio. It was time to lose herself in her work. Or just force herself to work. Because annoying attraction or not, she still had bills to pay. Chapter 5. Kayce nearly stumbled over absolutely nothing as he stepped out of the chocolate shop on Bienville Street. Nola Cartier was walking straight toward him, though she was glancing down at her phone and hadn't seen him yet. In a one-shoulder, body-hugging emerald green dress with sparkly heels and some kind of sparkles woven through her long dark curls, she looked magical. Wait, fuck him. Did he just think magical? Yum. She might have looked adorable the other night, but now... He frowned as a man jogged past her, did a double, no-weight triple take, and stumbled on an uneven part of the sidewalk. Nola. She looked up at his voice, blinked, then hit him with that blinding megawatt smile. "Oh, hey." Her smile eased a little, but man, being hit with the force of it was going to take a minute for him to recover. "Are you out on the town tonight?" "Oh, not really. He trailed off as his mom and youngest sister, Megan, stepped out of the chocolate shop, a bag in each of their hands. I'm out with my mom and sister. Nola, this is Megan, and... Oh, just call me Ines. Everyone does. His mom held out her hand, and he swore he had never seen her smile so big as she took in Nola. Nola, my son's new neighbor. We've heard great things about you. Nola's cheeks flushed slightly, but she smiled and cleared her throat. It's nice to meet you both. Kayce gave his family a pointed look, and, thankfully, for once in their lives, they took the hint and said something about heading into a nearby shop. Are you guys going out to eat? She asked. He laughed lightly. No, mainly because my mom and sister ate their weight in chocolate in the shop. They ate all the samples, and I wish I was exaggerating. Nola let out a surprised laugh. No shame in that, because it looks like they bought a lot, too. Oh, they always do. The owner is friends with my mom. So, where are you heading? He asked, hopefully more casually than he felt, because she looked like sex on heels. She pointed to the Italian restaurant only 2 places down from them, a staple in the old city. Good choice. And it's early enough not to be too crowded. And now I realize I sound geriatric. She snickered. Then I guess I am too, because I like going out to eat before it's dark out. I get hangry if I'm not fed like 6 times a day. My brothers tell me I'm part bear. He laughed lightly, feeling the strangest sense of relief at having run into her. It had been 2 long weeks since he had seen her, and yes, he was absolutely counting the days. He'd even gone over just to see if she wanted to have drinks one night. She hadn't been home. So he had fixed her front steps. If you're free tomorrow, do you want to grab lunch? He asked, deciding to just go for it. For a moment, she looked like that proverbial deer caught in headlights. I want to say yes, but we're neighbors. I mean, if you're asking just as friends, then... I'm asking you on a date. He didn't want there to be any confusion. She cleared her throat again, then frowned as she glanced at the window of the chocolate shop. Are your mom and sister watching us? He realized that she could see them in the reflection on the other side of the street, huddled together and watching them. Yup, I've been doing my best to ignore them. Oh my God, did you tell them I called you an ass face? He let out another unexpected laugh. No, but my sister probably would have agreed with you on principle. So, tomorrow. He already knew the answer, could see it on her face, and was disappointed on a level he hadn't expected. I want to say yes, but we're neighbors, and this has the possibility to go very wrong. Yeah, he knew that, but thought she was worth the risk. He also wasn't going to push her because that was just creepy. I get it. Well, whoever you're meeting tonight is lucky. You look amazing. Her cheeks flushed even darker as she smiled. Thanks. I'll see you around. He nodded, fighting the unfamiliar disappointment punching through him as they parted ways. So, his mom asked as he met up with his nosy family. So, what? She's gorgeous, she said, with his sister nodding along. Did you finally ask her out? Megan asked. We're not having this conversation. Because right about now, he felt like the awkward teenager he had once been. He knew what he looked like now, but he hadn't grown into himself until he'd been 22. Fine, but I want a spring wedding, his sister said. He stared at her in horror. Did you two get into the chocolate wine at Misty's place? In response, the two of them simply laughed, as if he had said the most hysterical thing ever. Chapter 6 Nola hated the way her heart skipped a beat as she pulled into her driveway, saw Kayce talking to one of their neighbors. After parking in her garage, she left it open and headed to her mailbox, pretending to check her mail. Because apparently that's who she was now. After she had realized that the hot blonde from 2 weeks ago hadn't been a date, but just his sister, she was back to crushing on him. Not that she had actually stopped. She waved as Mrs. Aguilar headed back to her house, and to her surprise, Kayce headed her way. Her heart rate was never going back to normal at this point. He had changed since she had seen him earlier in the evening, was in jeans, and a faded Nola Fire Department t-shirt. Now that she had seen him next to his sister and mom, she could definitely see the family resemblance. His sister might be a blonde, where he had dark hair, but they both, or all, had the same cheekbones and tall builds. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked as he reached her, because their neighbor had looked concerned. "Yeah, someone took something off her porch and she wanted to know if I'd seen anything." "I hope she figures it out. And that reminds me that I need to get one of those doorbell cameras too." "I've got an extra one if you want it." "Seriously?" "Yeah, my mom bought me one when I closed on the place. I'd already bought one and didn't want to say anything." "That's sort of adorable," she murmured. "And maybe the camera will help me figure out who fixed my front steps. Though, that's on a different level than stealing stuff." She didn't mind someone who came around and fixed things. "Oh, that was me." She blinked. "Really?" "Yeah, came over last week to see if you wanted to have a beer and watch the game, but you weren't home." "So you fixed my steps?" "Seriously, how is she going to keep things just friendly with him?" "Figured it was a good way to be a better neighbor." Oh, God. He was looking down at her with that smile again. The one that had her about to go up in flames. She cleared her throat. "So, want to have a beer now? I think there's a game on." He looked faintly surprised, but nodded. "Yeah, I was watching it when Mrs. Aguilar came over. You want to watch it at my place?" She headed back to his house with him, was surprised when he led her to the back patio area and saw his setup. "Oh my God, I can't believe you basically just moved in. This is amazing and way better than my back porch." He had a built-in bar, a giant TV on the wall, a grill, lights strung up everywhere, and really nice seating. Not to mention a pool with floating lights and a giant flamingo float. "I can't take all the credit for this. Guys from the firehouse set it all up that first weekend I moved in. I'm 99% sure they just want to hang out here sometimes to get away from the firehouse." "Well, they did an incredible job." She sat in one of the cushy papasan chairs facing the muted television as a basketball game played. "If they ever want, they're more than welcome to set up my place." "How long have you lived in your house, anyway?" He pointed to a couple different options in his outdoor fridge, grabbed the one she indicated. "Over a year, and I'm a tad embarrassed by how little I've done," she said on a laugh. "I even have some boxes I shoved under the guest bed I'm currently ignoring, but I am planting some crabapple trees tomorrow." "This late in the year?" "You're supposed to plant them in the fall, so we'll see what happens. My sister has a bunch of them, and I love the way they look. In the spring, I'm planning to plant a few more fruit trees as well." If she remembered. And if she didn't get so caught up in projects, which she was apt to do. "So, how is it being a fire inspector? Do you miss living at the firehouse?" "Oh, I love it, and yes, and no. I miss being with my friends all the time, that sense of community. But I also love figuring things out, so." He shrugged. "It's a trade-off. But I do like the relative stability of my current hours. I still get called out at random times, but I have more predictable hours now." She took the cold drink he handed her. That makes sense. So, how was your date tonight? She nearly coughed in surprise, but found herself biting back a smile because there was a definite hint of jealousy in his tone, and she didn't hate it. Oh, I was meeting up with my dad. We meet up once a month over dinner, catch up. She also had big family dinners at least once a month with everyone, but the time with her dad was special. He cleared his throat as he sat in one of the other chairs, stretched out. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I'm glad it wasn't a date. She sucked in a quiet breath, surprised by his honesty. Oh yeah, this whole chemistry between them was definitely real. I probably shouldn't admit this, but I'm glad that Megan is your sister. I thought she came over the other night for, well, whatever. Oh, I wondered why you ran off. It doesn't matter because we're just neighbors, and hopefully we'll become friends too. Friends. He sounded about as thrilled as she was at that prospect. But seriously, getting involved with her hot neighbor was just dumb. Dumb, dumb, dumb. You didn't have to walk me home. They'd watched the rest of the game, which had gone into double overtime, so it was almost midnight. But Nola only had to walk a few feet. I know, but it's late. He shrugged as they walked along his driveway, then over her lawn. So, did your parents name you Nola after the city, or... She snorted a little, the snort courtesy of being relaxed with him, and her third mixed drink. Honestly, I don't know what they were thinking. I think I was the fourth kid, and they just got lazy. He let out a bark of startled laughter. Well, I like it. I do too. Now. When I was younger, But it actually helps with my branding as an artist. And as I'm saying that out loud, I realize how ridiculous that sounds. He laughed again, and the sound rolled over her, made her want to lean into him and make bad decisions. Or good ones. Depended on how she looked at it. Because let's be real, she had a feeling they would be very, very good together. As they reached her top step, one of her sensor lights flicked on, surprising her. She had been meaning to change the bulb, but since she usually used her garage, she kept forgetting. I changed the bulb, he murmured, his gaze falling to her mouth as if he had read her mind. She turned to face him, her heart rate kicking up as she looked up at him. You're a really good neighbor. Too good. The words came out a little accusing, and his gaze was definitely still on her mouth. I could be an even better neighbor. His voice had dropped an octave, the lower pitch doing all sorts of things to her. As if pulled by a magnet, she stepped closer to him, found herself sliding her hand up his chest even as he lowered his head to hers, giving her plenty of time to pull back. Something she didn't want to do, even though she should, because reasons. As he crushed his mouth to hers, she wished she could say she showed some sort of restraint. But nope. She clutched onto his shoulders as he plastered her up against her front door. Vaguely, she realized that any of their neighbors could see them, what with the spotlight on her front door. But she couldn't muster up enough energy to care. She loved the feel of him pinning her in place, of all that rock-hard strength under her fingertips, and wondered what he'd look like posing for her. Because she desperately wanted to paint him. More than that, she wanted... A siren pierced the air and they both jumped back. What is that? Security alarm, he murmured, his gaze moving in the direction of the noise. Stay put. Yeah, that wasn't happening. She hurried after him toward Mrs. Aguilar's house, where the sound was coming from. Other neighbors trailed out of their homes as well, because the noise was air raid level. Kayce moved quickly, sprinting across their yards only to stop in front of a crying Mrs. Aguilar, who was standing in the middle of her yard, arms wrapped tightly around herself. He then hurried into the house as Nola reached the older woman. "Are you okay?" The woman nodded, trembling slightly. "Yeah, someone tried to break into my house, through the back door, set the alarm off." Nola tucked the woman up against her in a loose embrace right as the alarm went quiet. So, she must have given Kayce her code. "I called the police." Mrs. Johnson was suddenly there, along with her husband, cell phone in hand, her dark hair in a wrap. "Oh, it's going to be okay." She moved in, taking over and wrapping her arms around her friend's shoulders. Nola was glad for the other woman's presence. They might have a cooking rivalry that went back at least half a century, but they'd been friends for longer than she had been alive. There was something to be said for a friendship that had survived that long. Face grim, Kayce hurried across the lawn toward them. And right about then, Nola realized that practically the entire neighborhood was on the sidewalk or in the street. "Someone busted the lock on the back door," he said quietly. "We'll get it fixed in the morning, as soon as the hardware store opens. But you can stay at my place." No, she's staying with us." Mrs. Johnson patted her friend on the shoulder. "And the police should be here soon enough." "I bet someone's doorbell camera caught something," Nola murmured. Kayce nodded. "Let's hope so." Hours later, the police had taken Mrs. Aguilar's statement, talked to neighbors, gotten footage from anyone who had any, and the neighborhood was quiet once again. Though Nola was planning on putting up cameras sooner than later after this, she'd always felt safe in her house, but tonight had been scary. "I'm glad she's staying with friends," Nola said, as Kayce walked her to her front door for the second time that night, or morning as it was. "Me too." He rubbed a hand over his face, looking exhausted. "Look. Ooh, I don't like that tone." His own was dry. She gave him a small smile. "I think we need to slow down, to really think about things and just put the brakes on." Because the fact of the matter was they were still neighbors at the end of the day. And if or when things ended, she wasn't looking forward to seeing other women stay the night at his place, or watch him go out on dates. This just had the possibility to get really, really messy. Sighing, he pulled her into a hug, set his chin on top of her head. "Fine, but I'm installing cameras at your place tomorrow." She wanted to tell him that she'd handle it, but... "Okay, and thank you." As she stepped back, already missing the warmth of his embrace, she continued, "I think we should host another neighborhood barbecue before Thanksgiving weekend. Get everyone together and talk about setting up a neighborhood watch." He nodded. "I'm in. It's clear that everyone looks out for everyone, but it would be a good idea to get all the neighbors together anyway." "Okay, I'll call you about it." "And I'll call you about the cameras." He nodded, though he looked like he wanted to say more, but left her on her doorstep. Once she was inside, she leaned against the front of her door and just sighed. They were making the right decision by taking a step back. Absolutely. Chapter 7. Christmas Day. Nola waved at Kayce as she pulled into her driveway, not surprised to see him just getting home as well. It had been a long day with family. Fun, but long. And now she had presents to unload, her cat to cuddle, and she'd probably pass out within the next hour. Unless he wanted to hang out. They had been perfectly friendly neighbors the last month and a half, but that was it. Exactly what she had asked for. He waited in the driveway behind her, so she left the garage door open. "How was your day?" she asked as she stepped from her car. About as hectic as yours, I imagine. Do you need help hauling everything in your house? You assume I have a lot of stuff. She grinned as she popped the trunk. I mean, you're not wrong. He laughed as he looked in the trunk. You're the youngest sibling, so I was playing the odds. It's crazy. We're not supposed to get each other gifts since we do a dirty Santa game, but my brothers and sister always get me stuff. Actually, I'm pretty sure it's my sisters-in-law who do the gift buying. She paused for a moment at the back of the trunk. Is it because I'm the youngest? I get all my sisters and their kids gifts. She grinned. Maybe being the youngest isn't so bad. He snorted as he hauled out the first bag, then the second. Being the youngest is the best. My parents were so strict with me, but by the time they made it to Megan, I think they'd just given up. Or they knew when to pick their battles. She pulled out the last bag, shut the trunk. Where should I put all this? She followed him in through the mudroom into the kitchen. Just dump it on the island. I'm going through everything tomorrow. Her cat, Nebula, raced into the kitchen, her gray and white tail swishing back and forth as she started curling in and out of Kayce's legs. Because her cat was all about him, too. And who could blame her? Hey there, perfect girl, he murmured, bending to scoop her up. And not for the first time, Nola found herself jealous of her cat because she wanted him to call her perfect girl. But under very different, naked circumstances. Nebula purred, sounding a lot like his motorcycle engine as she butted her head up against his chin and neck. I'm glad I saw you because I actually have a present for you. I'll be right back. She set her own glittery red gift bag down on the floor next to the island, then made her way to her little studio and picked up the gift she'd spent a lot of time working on. When she stepped back into the kitchen, it was to find him stepping back inside from the mudroom, a gift bag in his hand as well. I have something for you too. His grin was a little sheepish. I'd planned to give it to you yesterday, but then my sister needed help with last-minute shopping. Christmas Eve? Your sister likes to live on the edge. No kidding. He handed her the bag at the same time she handed him his. Her eyes widened when she pulled out the personalized long wooden paintbrush holder. This is incredible. I love it. Thank you. And it was thoughtful. There were various sized holes to fit all her brushes, and on the front, in delicate script, were the words, Nola's brushes, hands off, which just made her smile even more. I love mine too, thank you, he said quietly as he took in the small canvas. This is really thoughtful. It was an oil painting of an old Victorian house in the Garden District he'd once told her that he loved driving by while on the job. The original owner has long since passed, but it was a staple in the city that everyone recognized. You're welcome. Clearing her throat, she averted her gaze, pulled out a bottle of wine one of her brothers had given her. Are you heading back out tonight? No. He trailed off as his phone buzzed in his pocket. His expression changed as he looked at the caller ID. Or maybe I am. Give me a second, he murmured, stepping away. Nebula didn't follow him, but jumped up on the high-top stool instead and waited to be picked up. You are my little cuddlebug, Nola murmured, nuzzling her as she sat at one of the stools, Nebula in her lap. You get a call? She asked, as Kayce walked back in, his expression clear. Yeah. He gave her a long look, one she might describe as longing. Or maybe she was projecting, because she was over this friends-only nonsense. Text me when you get back if it's not too late. I'm listening to Christmas music and staying in the rest of the night. You're not going out with friends? No, my nieces and nephews exhausted me. and I'm not ashamed to say I need some quiet after the wonderful loudness of my family. I have a feeling this is going to be a late one, he said, but I'll text you this week. Sounds good. Liar, liar. It wasn't good at all. She wanted to tell him to come back to her place as soon as this call out was over, no matter how late it was. She'd been the one to put the brakes on between them, and he'd definitely listened. So for the last 2 months, they'd gotten to know one another, headed up a neighborhood watch that was going strong, and texted or talked throughout the week. He was more than just a ridiculous crush now. He was her friend. And she really, really liked him. So why did that seem to make things even more complicated? Biting back a sigh, she followed him out and shut the garage behind him. When she stepped back into the kitchen, she found Nebula on the countertop, watching her with that adorable face and judgy green eyes. Nebula meowed once, loudly. I'm questioning my life's choices too. I don't need you to judge me on top of it. Nebula sniffed once, then jumped onto the floor and scampered off. Chapter 8. New Year's Eve. So, I know why I'm here on New Year's Eve, her sister Celine said, around a mouth of ice cream. But why aren't you out with your friends, dancing and whatever? It never ceases to amaze me that you landed someone as hot as Jared. Nola looked pointedly at the ice cream dripping down her sister's chin. They were in Nola's living room, trying to decide which movie to stream next. She wanted action, her sister wanted horror, and they were still trying to find a compromise. Celine threw an M&M at her as she scrolled to the next page. Whatever. I don't let him see this side of me, she said on a laugh. And you're not supposed to judge me on Sister's Night. This is where I can be my true goblin self. Your house is my safe place. She snickered as popcorn followed the M&Ms. I'm not judging, just a little grossed out and impressed by how much you're eating. You were one to talk, considering you're part bear. Her sister shoved more M&Ms in her mouth with a big smile. I don't keep any of this at the house, so I'm taking advantage with a full-on sugar fest. Fair warning, I'm going to be asleep by like 10. Her sister's kids were staying at one of their brother's houses for the night, so all the cousins could ring in the new year together. Celine's husband wasn't feeling well and had told her to go out and have fun, so it was the first sister's night in a long time. Everyone I know is coupled up at this point. Well, almost everyone. Fleur isn't, but she's not going out either. She's working on a new collection for the gallery, and Clara is hanging out with her mom instead of going out. And at the risk of sounding ancient, I don't want to fight the crowds when I can have champagne in my nice, quiet house. She loved going dancing, but trying to brave the crowds on New Year's Eve, especially in New Orleans, was pure insanity. Most years she went to a house party, or when she had lived downtown, she had just hung out with her neighbors, going from condo to condo, seeing everyone before calling it a night. Do you ever think our parents were completely right sometimes? Going to bed early is the best, and no one can change my mind. Well, yeah, but I'll never, ever tell them that. Her sister just laughed. Right? So, what's up with you and the hot firefighter? Nola raised an eyebrow. Oh, you can call my husband hot, but I can't call your neighbor hot. Whatever. Jared is objectively good-looking. And, fine, I have no room to talk. Nothing is up between me and Kayce. Unfortunately. I casually asked what he was doing tonight to see if he wanted to hang out, but he said he had a work thing, and that sounds sort of fake. So I think he's on a date and didn't want to tell me. What's that mean? Nothing. Just wild that you've fallen so hard for someone. Oh, if I remember correctly, you and Jared eloped after 2 months together. Her sister got that same starry-eyed look on her face whenever anyone brought up how the two of them had run off and gotten married. So, Nola pressed play on her movie of choice. Don't think you're sneaky. Her sister stretched out as the spy movie started playing. I wanted to see this anyway. And take my advice for what it's worth. Just go for it. If things go to shit, then they go to shit. But Kayce is a solid guy. So even if things don't work out, I don't think he'd go nuclear on you. Yeah, she didn't either. Sighing, she laid her head on her sister's shoulder as a woman on a motorcycle flew across the screen. Hours later, the sound of an engine pulled Nola from a deep sleep fueled by champagne and ice cream. Blinking, she rolled out of bed and glanced at her cell phone. 2 a.m. The engine revved again. Wait, was that Kayce? Nebula raised her head from her pillow, then went right back to snoozing. Trying to shake off her exhaustion, Nola stumbled from the room and made her way outside. And sure enough, there was Kayce very intentionally revving his engine as he stared at her house. Frowning, she stalked across her front yard, glad she had remembered to put on slippers. She fought a chill as she wrapped her robe around her tighter. He hooked his helmet on the handle as he slid off the bike, looking far too sexy as he stalked toward her. What are you doing? She asked around a yawn. Who's at your house? She blinked, staring at him uncomprehendingly. What? He motioned to the black Jeep with red trim. She stared at him again, this time comprehending. Are you asking if I have someone over? Are you jealous? Yep. And he didn't look sorry about that at all. Sweet, fluffy kittens. She should not like that so much. But the thought of him having someone over to his house, ugh, she couldn't even stomach the thought. My sister is here. We're having a girls' night. The tenseness in his body eased slightly. Seriously. Hey, everything okay? Celine stepped out onto the front porch. Nola turned to see Celine half waving, hoped the rest of their neighbors hadn't heard anything. We're good. Smiling, her sister gave her a thumbs-up sign while clutching a tub of ice cream in her other hand. Nola blinked. Are you eating again? Celine blew her a raspberry, then disappeared from sight. She turned back to Kayce. What? He kissed her, hard and demanding, with the kind of intensity that sent spirals of pleasure out to all her nerve endings. She held on to him as he teased his tongue against hers, with such a thoroughness she could only imagine how thorough he'd be in bed. She had no idea how much time passed, but when he finally pulled back, she nearly lost her footing. But he held her up, tugging her against him as if he couldn't bear to let her go. I hate the thought of you going out with anyone else, he growled. And oh, that sound. It curled through her, settled in her bones. I can see that. What are we going to do about this? You can go out with me, and only me, because I don't share. Heat sparked through her at the possessiveness in his tone. Good thing, because I don't share either. So, you and me, tonight, a first official date. A soft demand, his words laced with hunger. Yes. And deep down she knew this would be the first of many, because he wasn't the kind of man you walked away from. We could start right now, if you wanted. He gave her a dark, heated grin she felt all the way to her core, and yep, she knew their first date was going to be one she'd never forget. Epilogue. 3 months later. Are you sure you're not going to screw this up? Maybe I should hold the ring. Kayce's sister Megan held out her hand. His two other sisters, Maya and Louise, nodded. Yeah, I feel like you're going to mess this up, Maya murmured in agreement. This was the sister who had gotten fired from her last job because she somehow lost the digital files for a big presentation. Oh my God, I'm the oldest. I literally changed your diaper, he said to Maya. Ew. His mother shooed them out of the room as she approached. You're not going to screw anything up. I wasn't worried until the three goblins. Hey, Louise shouted. We can hear you. That was from Megan. I wasn't whispering, he called out, devolving into a teenager again. And I didn't ask all four of you to ambush me today. You're not supposed to be here. They were supposed to be at the restaurant he had reserved. He knew that Nola would hate for him to propose in front of others, so he was doing it privately. And if she said yes, she had to, right? They were going to meet at the Italian restaurant she loved so much for a celebration with both their families. His mother gently patted his upper arm. We're just excited for you, but you're right. We'll leave. Head to the restaurant once she says yes. He blinked. Did you just pause? She laughed lightly. Yes, but not for the reason you think. Just, we'll see you once you arrive. But give me a heads up and I'll get the champagne ready. Okay, but now you all need to go. By the time he got them all herded out of his house and driving down the street, Nola was pulling into her driveway. She waved and smiled, and it was like a punch to the solar plexus, just like always. He greeted her at her open garage, drinking in the sight of her. How was your spa day? Amazing. I don't know what got into my mom, but she sprung for everything. Nola sat on a happy sigh as she slid her hands up his chest and around the back of his neck. Massages, manis, petties, the works. Leaning down, he claimed her mouth and wanted to claim a whole lot more, but he wasn't doing this in her garage. Somehow he managed to tear himself away from her perfect mouth. I've got a surprise for dinner. Come on, he murmured, tugging her with him. I love what you did to your lanai and pool, she said, as she took in all the twinkle lights. With the time change, it was lighter later now, but the sun was setting and his backyard was a magical oasis, as she liked to call it. His mom and sisters had insisted that they add more lights for ambiance, and fine, whatever, they'd been right. When she turned to face him, he was already down on one knee. Her eyes widened, and in that moment, the small amount of fear he'd been holding on to dissipated when she gave him that megawatt smile. Yes. Laughing, he slid the custom-made ring onto her finger. I didn't actually ask. Then make it official. God, he loved that demanding tone she got sometimes. Marry me. Her smile grew even wider. Any day of the week. Standing, he pulled her into his arms, crushing his mouth to hers once again. I've been holding on to this ring for weeks, he murmured when she finally stepped back. Well, I love it. She held out her hand, smiling at the simple platinum band with an intricate design of vines, flowers, and a nod to their combined French, Spanish, Cajun heritage. She loved dangly earrings and necklaces, but never wore any rings, so he'd gone for something flat with no gems that wouldn't get in the way of her work. Whoever designed this did an incredible job. If you want something with a diamond or sapphire or... No, you chose incredibly well, which just means you really do know me. I love it, and I love you. She smiled up at him again, her gaze turning heated. He groaned slightly. We're supposed to meet your family and mine for a celebration dinner. I rented out your favorite place, hoping you'd say yes. I Can't believe you could ever doubt that. She paused, her expression turning mischievous. Do you think we have time for a quickie? Definitely. For her, anything. Thank you so much for listening to this audiobook. Kayce has a cameo in the book Fighting for Adeline, if you'd like to check out the Redemption Harbor Security series. And if you'd like to stay up to date on Katie's new releases, feel free to visit her website and sign up for her newsletter at www.katiereus.com. That's www.katiereus.com. This has been Falling for Nola by Katie Reyes. Read for you by Joshua McCrae.
Welcome back.
Welcome back, lady listeners. Thank you so much to Katie Reyes for being with us this week.
Thank
Woo!
you.
It was awesome. Up next week, we have Kate Hunt with Destined to the Billionaire Cowboy. And I am so pumped for this book because the title alone is everything I love. Destined for the Billionaire Cowboy. Sign me up. So, yeah. Super excited. Make sure you check out Alexa Riley's new release. We had The Bad Man and The Good Girl. And also get your Read Me Romance book box. They are available now. Go on the website to purchase. 100% of your purchase goes back into funding more audiobooks. So grab it. And then also join our Patreon for extra stuff. There's over 100 audios in there with your monthly subscription. And there's tons of ebooks as well, too. And I don't know. There's tons of stuff in there. Make sure you check that out if you want anything extra or free ebooks or whatever. So, yeah. Is that everything?
Is that it?
Oh, my God. I think that's it.
All right. Tell them what to do.
Fuck your day up. Make your day your bitch. Don't be a dick.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Me romance, read me romance, read me romance, read me romance. You could take a look in a book, that's fine, or you could sit back, relax, and unwind and read